been a good day. First item of business would be the minutes of our last meeting, December 1. Any corrections on those?
We approve the minutes.
Okay. We have a motion for approval, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by aye. Opposed? Had to do it the hard way tonight?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
We'll try not to make this work more than about 2 hours.
That sounds fantastic.
Council, with your permission, can I reverse the order a little bit? We do have an auditor here that's out of town, and that way you're sure not Rachel.
I'm not, no, that's a good observation.
I hope it's a good observation. Better just leave it at that. But I don't know who you are, but welcome.
Yeah, well, let me introduce myself. I'm Kevin Fisher with RFH CPAs, and Rachel was going to present the audit this evening, and she is sick today. So they asked me to fill in. I'm a partner at RFH CPAs, and I do a lot of city audits. I primarily do governmental work. So I feel pretty good. I can present the results of your audit to you this evening. You guys have a few documents in front of you that I'm gonna cover. One is there's a greenbound book, and then there's 2 letters that you have. Okay, and I'm gonna start with the greenbound book. Okay,
This one or this one?
the one with binding. Yeah, that one. So that is within that book is your audit report. The first thing you'll notice is it's 57 pages, so there's a lot of information. For the sake of the presentation this evening, what I like to cover when I present audits is the results. There's a lot of information in there. There's a lot of information on your financials that I could cover that could have you here for a long time, but for this evening, I like to explain what the results of the audit were and what's in the greenbound book and why it's in there really quickly, and then take any questions that you may have. If I don't cover it, it's not because I don't think it's important. I think everything in here, for the most part, is very important. It's just for the sake of time. So, directly after the table of contents is the independent auditor's report. That is a 3-page document, and that is the independent auditor's report for your fiscal year 2025 financial statements. The 3-page, what you're concerned with in this, in the 3 pages, is at the very beginning, the auditor's opinion, okay? So at the very top, the second paragraph of page 1, I'm not gonna read it word for word, but it says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects, the respective financial position, the governmental activities, the business type activities, and then it goes on for the city of Wilmore as of June 30th, 2025. What that auditor's report is telling you is that it's a clean, fair audit opinion, which means that as auditors, we were able to come in and you all provided us your financial information. We audited it, and we're saying that the numbers and information that follows this audit report in that greenbound book is fairly stated in all material respects. So meaning good, reliable information about the city of Wilmore's financials, okay? So that's a good report. Whenever you engage the auditor every year, the auditor actually does 2 reports. There's also a report later on internal controls, but I'll cover that as I'm gonna flip through the book really quickly and get to that report as well. Directly after the independent auditor's report on page 4, this is management's discussion and analysis. This goes from page 4 to 11. This is management's report. It's not our report. Our role as auditors is to review the information in there and make sure that it corresponds to the audited financial statements. So we have done that. We believe that the information in here, the numbers and the references to your financials correspond and agree to the audited financial statements. On page 12, page 12 and 13 for the auditor is is very interesting for us, because this is the one time a year that you see this financial statement. So page 12 and 13 is the citywide financials. So it's taking the city on a full accrual, if the city was a for-profit business, which we know it's not, but if it were, showing its total financial picture. So it's reporting capital assets, it's recording debt, it's recording the net pension and OPEB liability, and it's reporting the city together, all of its funds in one statement. So typically you're only gonna see this statement once a year, and it's at the end of the audit with your audited financial statements. So that's page 12 is your balance sheet for the citywide. Page 13, this is your income statement. So this is the income statement for the city on a full accrual basis. And at the bottom there, page 13, it says change in net position. There's a total increase in net position of 1.2 million, so that would be the net income for the city for the year, so that's a positive. So that's showing it citywide, okay? On page 14, these are your fund financial statements. So this gives you your financials at a fund level. So it's got the general fund, and it's got some of your other governmental funds consolidated together. This statement is on a modified accrual. It's a different accounting basis. So every now and again I get a question on, sometimes the numbers on page 14 are different than page 12. And that's by design because it's a different basis of accounting. Page 13 is your income statement for the governmental funds. So it's breaking out for you the general funds separately from, if you go to page 16 and 17, it's giving you the water, sewer, and the sanitation. After that, those are your financial statements. On page 19, it gives you the footnote disclosure. So from page 19 to 40, there is a ton of information. There's information on the city's long-term debt, on its capital assets, on the CRS liability, the retirement system, just a ton of information. I like to tell my clients that information is all required to be in there to meet standards. We don't just put a bunch of information in there for the fun of it. It's all required, and based on our audit, we believe that all the information that's required to be in there is in there to support your financial statements. And that's pages 19 to 40. So just to give you an explanation of what that is and why it's there. If you skip to page 41, it's kind of hidden a little bit. I like to point out that it's there because those who were in the budget preparation process, I think it's an interesting schedule. But page 41 and 42 gives you the general fund budget to actual. So it shows you what was the budget and what was the actual results, what was budgeted for revenues, what was budgeted for expenditures, gives you by department, shows you where it landed. I like to point that out because it's supposed to be where it is, but it's kind of hidden back there between that 20 pages of footnotes, so it'd be kind of easy to overlook that statement. Page 43. From page 43 to 53, there is a ton of information on the CRS net pension liability. I would not encourage you, if I were in your seats, to spend time on that. It's all required to be there. All the information that's required to be there is there. I just think from your all's role, I don't think there's useful information. I don't think it assists you in your budget preparation process or assists in planning for the city in any way. So I just like, sometimes I get the question is, what is this 10 pages, what does it mean and why it's there? So, I like to point out that it's all required to be there, but I wouldn't spend too much time in there. There's nothing hidden in there that you should be concerned about. Page 54. A couple of your funds, the street and cemetery, are smaller funds. So at the beginning on the financial statement, it's all consolidated. Back here in the back, it gives you that individual detail for those funds. So I like to point out that that's there. And then finally, every year you engage the auditor to express an opinion on your financials, which was the first opinion that I said was a clean opinion, a good opinion. As part of the audit, you also engage the auditor to review your internal controls and to assess and report on your compliance with laws and regulations applicable to you. So this is the report that if you have a finding, it would be here. A lot of people, when they think audit, the first thing they hear is there a finding, and so if you had a finding or you had a compliance issue, it would be in this report, the first report is either good or bad, really. Was the auditor able to express a good opinion or not? We were able to express a good opinion. This is, are there any findings or issues? So we didn't have any issues to report, so that's very positive. We didn't have any findings. So that is a positive. I can say in my experience, that is a strong position to be in. That's the majority of my audits have a finding, so I think that's a good thing, to not take for granted that you don't have any findings there. So that is the Greenbound book. That's how I like to present it, just to kind of go through like what's in it and why it's there, and just focus on what the reports are saying. So hopefully some of that was beneficial for you guys. There's a few more documents in front of you. I see the mayor has one. We'll start with what you have in front of you there. You all have a bond issuance where your occupational license tax, we have to do a calculation to determine how much can be transferred to the general fund. So we've done that, I won't say it out loud, but we've done that calculation for you all. So that's provided to you this evening. I'm not sure if everyone got one of those. We only had like 5 of them, but I'm sure the mayor can share it with you if you didn't receive it.
Good news, I'll be glad to.
There's another letter in front of you. This one is 4 pages. This is a required communication between the auditor and those charged with governance. So this letter gets provided to you all every year at the end of the audit. The audit report, the Greenbound book, is a public document. What is your report? This letter is a communication from the auditor with you all. It's designed for, in my opinion, some things that we want to communicate with you that don't get put in the audit report that is more public. So did we have any, perhaps a disagreement or a delay? Things of that nature is kind of what you would be concerned about. We didn't have anything like that. We didn't have difficulties or disagreements, so that's good. On the second page, standards require us to list if we had an adjustment. So I don't want to get lost too much in this. I'm sure Lori can explain if you have any questions on adjustments, but there's, in the audit world, there's the concept of materiality. And so if we come in, when you all provide numbers and we come in and audit them, sometimes from time to time, we have a suggested adjustment, and if you all deem it to not be material, we can agree that it's not material. But we provide it here to point out those adjustments that you all passed on. So that's under general fund, water, sewer, and I believe the government-wide governmental funds. So those are not findings or issues, but they are required disclosures, is how I would explain that. On the page after that, the third page, I'm not gonna read these. There's a recommendation related to signature stamp and establishing a reserve for your KI loan and a segregation of duties. These are not findings, these are recommendations. So we're always looking for, even when we don't have a finding, we're looking for areas that we can recommend on things that possibly could be approved upon or that you all could consider that could be helpful. And that's what those things are. I think Heather said that she had these in here last year as well. So not to be confused as a finding, but we have them in there because we feel like they could be good ideas, good suggestions that you all might want to implement. And that's that, that's all I had. There is a PowerPoint, slides there. I did flip through that. I didn't prepare that, but when I looked at it, if you'll notice, like directly after the cover there, it talks about the results of the audit and the recommendations. And after that, what it gives you is it gives you multiple year-over-year comparisons on your financials, which is really helpful and interesting to see. But for the sake of time, I wasn't gonna go through every single statement and why this went up and why this went down and that type of thing. We're always available if you guys have questions. We're happy to answer any questions on changes in your numbers and where they're at. And that is all I had. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Well, I just want to give a shout out to Miss Lori. I sit in the office next to her and I know what she goes through preparing for this. And she takes her job very serious and it reflects that way. So thank you again. Good job, well done. She gets a lot of help too.
Does she? Good.
from our city clerk.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we accept the audit as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Think there's any question, all in favor, please indicate by aye. Opposed? Thank you, sir.
All right, thank y'all for
Appreciate
having
your
me.
good
Have a
report.
night.
And, coming tonight. Chris, I think you're next. Christopher Montgomery, Deputy Director, Interim Director, whatever you are now.
I don't know sometimes. Tonight I've brought before you all a text amendment to the City of Wilmore zoning ordinance. It is related to short-term rentals. Back in December of 2020, the Planning Commission heard a text amendment for short-term rentals, made a recommendation to both the Jessamine County Fiscal Court and the Wilmore City Council. Unfortunately, that recommendation to the Wilmore City Council never actually made it to the Wilmore City Council. So we have been operating for the past 4.5, 5 years as if short-term rentals were approved and in the Wilmore zoning ordinance, when in fact they were not. So I had asked the Planning Commission if they would consider forwarding the original recommendation to the City Council in order to, get everything kind of in line with how we've been treating it, approving conditional use permits for short-term rentals through the Board of Adjustment. The Planning Commission took that as an opportunity to make some changes, potential changes to the short-term rental zoning ordinance that was previously presented. Do you all have a copy of this?
I emailed them one.
Okay, so you all have seen it though, and okay, so, are you all familiar with what was in the short-term rental ordinance before?
Why don't you brief us?
Okay, so, the short-term rental ordinance, previously, it, essentially allowed short-term rentals, VRBO, Airbnb, as either a conditional or permitted use, depending on what zone, a residence or business was in. So in some of our residential zones that are not zoned for multifamily, it's a conditional use. For those that are zoned multifamily, it was a permitted use. There are different requirements, including the length of time that the rental can be rented, for it to be considered short-term, less than 30 days. There is a limit on the number of bedrooms that can be used for short-term rental is 5. And then the number of individuals that could stay in each room. Different requirements such as complying with the health department and any city, county, state, federal regulations. And that's the general gist of what was in there before. Not being able to use RVs or manufactured homes as a short-term rental. It had to be an actual residence, or in some of the business zones, it could be, you're an offshoot of your bed and breakfast, that kind of thing. So, a couple of the changes that the Planning Commission is recommending to the short-term rental ordinance. The current ordinance in Jessamine County that is not in Wilmore only allowed for 2 individuals per bedroom. This made it really hard for a lot of people renting out the short-term rentals to advertise appropriately, because they were allowed to have children under 12, not included in that 2-person per bedroom. So we've introduced a change to have the maximum number of persons in the short-term rental is 2 times the number of bedrooms plus 4 individuals. That will allow those people advertising their short-term rentals to better capture the demographic that might be able to rent in their dwellings. Another large change in the proposed ordinance. So there was already something that the Board of Adjustment was to consider any restrictions or covenants placed on the plat in regards to approving short-term rentals. The Planning Commission added in that the Board of Adjustment shall also consider any restrictions that are within a deed of restriction for a neighborhood. It's not something that they have to abide by, but something that they want the Board of Adjustment to consider. Previously, we required a business license from the occupational tax office. Recently, the occupational tax office introduced a new county ordinance where they now require business certificates, essentially making sure that you're actually up to date on your taxes instead of just having a number. So this ordinance is changed to reflect that we would like the business certificate showing that they're up to date, instead of just that they've registered at some point in time. We better define that accessory structures and mobile homes are not allowed for short-term rental accommodations. And then added a clause in, that guests shall not use the short-term rentals, for commercial special events such as parties, weddings, concerts, because we get a lot of questions about that. Can I have my wedding here? Can I have the reception? As long as they don't all stay the night, it's fine, right? And the answer to that is no, but now we have something to reference. And then, also proposed is to have, an annual registration fee through the planning and zoning office. There's not been any amount determined on that. We are by KRS supposed to review conditional use permits annually. It's something that the planning and zoning office has not been doing. Adding that fee in yearly would help allow us to do that. It would also help us to ensure that the business certificates issued by occupational tax stay up to date so that we can, when we do our yearly review, we request that they provide us with their updated business certificate. And those are the large changes to what existed before. Like I said, the Board of Adjustment has been operating under the assumption that this did get passed into ordinance. It just never actually made it to the city council.
Any questions?
So it's the policies that that the county has been following for Wilmore, when
Yes.
Wilmore Airbnbs register or as they're practicing.
Yes, that is right.
So in a sense, what we're doing is saying it's okay that it's in writing now, or that Wilmore agrees with the changes that
Yes.
have been adopted.
Any questions? No. I think it's fine. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna accept it.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you.
Any discussion? Okay, motion is for approval of an ordinance, first reading.
Yeah.
An ordinance, first reading. Changes as indicated, by Chris. All in favor, please indicate by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, before Mr. Montgomery leaves, there's really not a good spot for this, so I thought the council might have some questions that Mr. Montgomery might be able to answer better than myself. I was made aware a couple of weeks ago that Roseglade Farm, through its owner, House Snowden Jr., had filed a request for an amended minor subdivision plat creating 2 lots on the north side, or on the, whatever side it is, on the Harrisburg Road side of Roseglade Farm. That would not only be in a portion of the area that is set aside as the development plan that was presented to the city and accepted, but it would also encompass a part of the conservation easement, which has been now finally determined to be a perpetual restriction on the land. I sent all the council and the mayor a copy of that plat. I also sent you all a copy of our letter, which was delivered to Mr. Montgomery and to the Planning Commission's attorney, Mr. Smith, indicating that the city objected to that for the foregoing reasons. And so I don't know where we're at. I assume no action has been taken by the commission.
That is correct. At this time, no action has been taken. It is, we are working with, our council to consider an appropriate response to
Okay.
Mr. Snowden.
Well, you all will make me aware if it's coming out before the commission.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, that's, you all know as much as I know, and probably as much as Mr. Montgomery knows.
Since you're here to jump back to Airbnb, I've got a question about that. It seems that Airbnb is allowed anywhere in Wilmore as long as it follows the guidelines of this. Is that true? Is it allowed in the Talbot subdivision, or is it not? Like, I've often heard
Yeah.
debates around this.
So- So planning and zoning is not required to enforce deed restrictions, within neighborhoods. So I believe in Talbot specifically, they do have, some deed restriction that would prohibit short-term rentals in the neighborhood. However, the Board of Adjustment is not required to abide by that deed of restriction. That is part of the reason for adding into the text that the Board of Adjustment shall consider the deed of restriction. And we actually have on our application that the applicants are supposed to provide us with a copy of the deed of restriction. That's something that, we have not enforced with the applications, up to this point. So it depends on how you look at it. From a planning and zoning perspective, technically, yes, they are allowed within the R1 zone, which is what Talbot is within. By the deed of restriction, they are likely not allowed. However, any opposition to short-term rentals in the neighborhood that already exist would require civil action by the HOA or other adjoining property owners.
Okay. So, because people do apply in Talbot subdivision, and
Yes.
people have gotten granted the ability to do Airbnb, and sometimes it's dependent on how their neighbors feel about it, because there is no HOA, as far as I know.
Yes, there have been, short-term rentals approved by the Board of Adjustment in the Talbot subdivision, and, all the adjoining property owners are notified via certified mail and have the ability to speak at the public hearing for the board.
So the ones that have been allowed just simply didn't have neighborhood resistance?
I don't know that I can necessarily
Yeah,
speak to
sure.
that
They're
without
probably-
going
Sure.
back to look at
Okay.
all the records.
Okay. But other neighborhoods in Wilmore has been fine with their Airbnbs. There's no other restrictions on the city,
Other than,
other than what's.
yes.
I often get the question asked to me, so, I was just curious if you could clarify any further, but I think I've heard what I already know.
Okay.
Thank you. Next is a request to submit a TAP grant application for the final design of Kentucky 29 Trail. Amy Fitch shows as presenter.
Hi, hopefully you all have had a chance to look at the summary that was provided by Scott Thompson with the Lexington MPO, which is the Metropolitan Planning Organization. Jessamine County and Fayette County are joined together in that one, and the MPO is over all things transportation related. So he was made us aware that the TAP application for grants was open, and he encouraged us to consider applying for that for the design phase of the Kentucky 29 Trail. And bear in mind that that does go all the way from East Main and Lexington Avenue all the way out to connect with the existing trail that's there where the new parking area is at the Y. So you can see on that bottom part of that paragraph, it talks about what the cost would be. Bear in mind, this is the design phase, so that's not have anything to do with the construction, but this is the next component that would need to take place in order to further this trail concept along. You can also see the amount of connectivity that this trail would provide from Wilmore past the high school. and then eventually, all the way through Lexington and eventually to, into Georgetown, Scott County. So, it's a really neat concept all the way through, and they're working on all of the, elements of it in different areas, Fayette County, Scott County, and us, hopefully. If there are further questions than that, Andy may be able to answer and help out with that, because we were on a phone call with him, with Scott Thompson. And also, if we need to, we can, request that Scott Thompson could come and answer further questions. That is about the extent of my knowledge.
As most of us know, we've been working on a trail pedestrian pathway to the Y for many years. And a trail feasibility study was done and completed in 2024. That can be found online. I wish I had brought my printed copy of it, but this facility would be phenomenal for our community. It would allow our students to bicycle to school at West Jessamine. It would allow athletes to run a trail, bicycle trail, miles. The end game, this project may take a decade to finally get done, just because the amount of easements and phases of it. But the end game is pedestrian pathway all the way to Georgetown, to the horse park and further into Georgetown. It would also create a lot of alternative measures of commuting and exercise, quality of life, the types of things that folks care about in towns. So when I heard that the TAP application was available, Scott is involved with the Wilmore Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee that Amy's in, David Riles in, John Steinmetz from Banks Engineering, Bradley Cochran, a few others. And so Amy was on the call, myself, David Ryle, Scott, John Steinmetz, and Bradley Cochran. And so we were able to kind of hear a little bit of what this looks like. I was a bit confused about what a trail feasibility study is versus a design. This is the final design that basically makes it shovel ready for construction, and is required in order to continue moving forward. I was also in a call this last week with the MPO of Transportation Policy of Fayette and Jessamine County, and they said that's a very exciting project. That's something that we've been wanting. Folks in Wilmore are not the only people that are wanting this pathway to the Y. And I'm sure many of us have heard a desire to get to the Y on a pathway. But people outside of Wilmore and in our county is. One thing I want to point out is the final design percentage of the cost for the city here is stated as $80,000. I would imagine what the city is actually needing to pay for that is a great deal less. I really believe that David West and the county would join into that, because they also would like to see a pathway happen. I'm also really impressed that this last year we raised $50,000 towards trees and solar panels. I think if needed, this is also something where if needed additional dollars we could raise. Those dollars are not for the current budget. These dollars would not be spent and needed until after the current budget, after July 1st of 2026. So it would be on our next budget that we would be committing those dollars for. Those dollars aren't committed at this time until a grant is approved and the grant is accepted. But the grant deadline is January 19th. Scott Thompson has offered to do most of the legwork of writing the grant in order to get through. He really believes that this particular connection point is very attractive for TAP funds, or has a great potential to receive TAP funds. So because of that, I moved that we apply for the TAP funding for Trail to the Water. If David Rao was here, he might offer a second because he was in support of it on that call.
I'm gonna ask if you could hold that motion till next time he's here, and we have the entire council, or at least David, because I think we should know if the county is gonna participate, and that simply is a call or two. And I still have some question about connectivity. Is it gonna be on the Ashbrook side? And now I hear that it might be on the other, but I don't know how you get across two traffic of 50-mile-an-hour traffics with no stoplights. I can't see the state allowing us to put people across the road unless it's on the Ashbrook side. And I think that was the feasibility study that we thought we had, knowing that we have opposition from the Ashbrook family, but at development time of their property with the 200-foot setback, then that's when that would happen. But short of two stoplights on 29 to get you across like it is on 169, I don't see how we have connectivity.
Yeah, and that's a very good question and concern. And I brought it up to Scott, and Scott said that there are ways to manage pedestrian traffic across the highway at the Y, and again, at another point, coming into Wilmore. And that would be part of this design, and that would be taken care of. We've been told that the folks at the Sycamore Farm don't want it on their side. I think the focus right now is to make a trail to the Y, and according to Scott Thompson and the BPA and the MPO, that could be done, and that could be done safely. And so I'm just trusting engineers can make that happen safely. The exact alignment of the pathway is not decided at this point. The exact alignment is decided once funds are, once this design, once the design begins, once we receive the funds. And things could happen at that time, people's opinions could change, but what we are asking for is TAP funds to get a pedestrian pathway to the Y. There's pathways that cross roads in other places that don't require lights. We've got one over by the seminary. I understand that's in town, but there's other pathways that takes place. But that's a question for people smarter than me with transportation engineering skills. My concern is this is not something that's going to be completed in 2 years. And the sooner the sooner that we are moving towards this project, and this is a project that the city has been wanting for decades, the sooner we take the next step, the sooner we can see a completion.
And that's the reason $100,000 was spent on a feasibility study, because we wanted it. We still want it. You know, the question is, do we understand that it may take a decade to get access to the properties without condemnation? I was just sharing that historically, we've never condemned property.
And I don't think that
But
Scott
one
is,
side or the other, I can tell you, you are at this point,
well, we have a conservation easement on the
but
west
you
side.
don't on the rest of that property on the other side across the Dispinets and the Thompson and et cetera. So I'm.
I don't think
simply
that,
prepared
what
for-
I'm not hearing from Scott Thompson that this pathway is gonna require condemnation or access of land through that measure. My one concern about pushing it to the next meeting is if we have a deadline of writing it on the 19th and it takes 2 votes, I would rather get a yes vote now, and then if it's gotta be a no vote, have the no vote on the next meeting.
But you made the motion and I'll just leave it there.
Sure, but am I correct that I mean, would it be allowed to have the vote next meeting and still have time?
Yeah, we'd only have to have one reading, it's not an ordinance at this point. It's a motion to sign, authorizing the signing of the contract.
And I agree that knowing the amount of county funds are behind it is a big part of this, and I was, when you and I last spoke, it sounded like you were gonna be meeting with David West, but maybe it was too early to bring the topic up with him.
I support what you're trying to do. I support.
I know that it's been on your,
connectivity.
yeah, it's
I mean,
been on your
that's-
plate for many years, and.
The whole point of, I was on the 68 corridor, and that was a big part of putting that up through there, that someday that would connect to Wilmore.
Yeah.
So it does need to connect to Wilmore. The connectivity is a difficult thing right now, with potential litigation on either side of the street to get there.
Yeah,
I mean,
we have people all over both regions in the state that are very interested in this trail happening. And there are ways to get there, we just have gotta keep moving towards that.
Okay.
I guess my concerns are, I'd like to know if the state is okay with crossing the road. I'd like to know how much the county wants to participate. To me, I don't know where we got tied into being required to spend $4 million. It seems like a number somebody pulled out of the sky. There is no way that should cost that much money to build that trail. I'm in construction every day. There's zero chance that it costs that much. It's all government bloat built into it. I don't think there's any way that this $400,000 worth of plans. I don't see how it costs any more than $40,000, maybe even $15,000 to make the plans. So to me, it's just too much wasted money in this. I wanna know, is there any other way to get around this and get this completed without all the bureaucracy getting involved to make it way inflated on price? I love the trail, I want it to connect as well. It's just, I have a hard time swallowing that much money for plans just because someone says, oh, well, it's a $4 million project and we get 10%. No, I don't think so. So that's my struggle, and I think you can say that and still love the trail and want the trail. So if the state says, oh, we can do it, we think this is what it will really cost, here's why we think it'll cost that. If the county says, oh, well, we really think that's true too, let's come in, we're gonna help with, $60,000. Well, I mean, then we're talking, but the way it is right now, it just seems like a lot. It does help, in my view, it helps that it's next year's budget, because that was my first thing, is like, there's no way right now. So that's a big plus for me, that you said, well, we'd have to wait and see if we get it, and then the funds would then come, it'd basically be next year. So, that helps some, but, it still seems like a lot to me for what it is, for the plans.
I appreciate your point of view, I agree, it sounds like a lot of money. The number, $4 million for the entire project over the next decade, or the completion of it, was from the trail feasibility study, that's where those numbers came. I usually hear about $1 million a mile on any pathway that is for commercial or just for pedestrian public usage. It's very similar to building a road, but I can send the link. The trail feasibility study's online, but I'd like to send that link out to everyone so that they can see kind of where they came up, that information of how it came up with that. But Yeah, I think we've seen, I don't know how much the current pathway, which I think is called the Heritage Trail, cost. I don't imagine it cost us too much to get that, but we also see a lot of deterioration on that over time, and I doubt ADA qualified for that, and width isn't where it would need to be when, like, if any of you have seen the Legacy Trail or been on it, that's the type of pathway that we're talking about, on grade and durability but
It's basically a one-lane road.
mhm.
What is the length of this? You know?
I believe it's 2.5 miles, which does not line up with $1 million mile, and I don't know where the greater costs are.
Well, I think if you
Is that
look at
correct?
your,
It's covering the entire phase. It's making improvements on our current Heritage Trail. It's also making improvements on our, either, one phase of it is, one option is either to come alongside North Lexington as it comes into town, because the terminus is basically the intersection where Subway is. And it's either adding bike lanes there, or other improvements, or going something around Epworth through the community to make that work.
if you look at that, you'll find most of your cost was in property acquisition and utility relocation. You know, that was like $300,000 on one little section for property acquisition and utilities moved over. So that ran it.
Does anyone know the distance to the Y from here? I think I could probably pull it up but I think I saw somewhere in the feasibility study there was two.
I guess my issue, and first, let me just say, I am in favor of the trail to the Y. But there's a lot of vagueness spoken tonight, like a lot of unanswered questions of, well, let's just put $80,000 on something that's put on the shelf for 10 years, and then it's gonna cost, what's gonna cost in 10 years when it's finally done? 4 million today is probably 10 million in 10 years. But that aside, there's just a lot of unanswered questions. One, how do you get across the road without a stoplight? And maybe that's why it costs $4 million if you gotta do a tunnel twice under the road. But anyway, it's just too much vagueness for me to.
Yeah.
We'll need a little more we'll need a better presentation, at our next meeting. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
From me.
A lot of it just kind of came up last minute to me. I just
And that's
heard about it
scary.
Wednesday.
You don't
or
want,
Thursday.
yeah, and that's
Well,
how
that
you
a
get your
tap
best money
application.
wasted at last minute.
Yeah, I think it's something that we have preparation for on feasibility study, but I'm not prepared to fully speak to the timeline of it. It would be done in phases, and when those things are spent.
Would we want to redo this next week or 2 weeks?
We
I
can
don't
ask
think we have
Scott
an
Thompson.
option, so.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we're gonna.
If Scott's
Motion.
available, he can answer all of these questions, and he is the, leading expert on all things trail building and how you do it, how you cross roads safely, all of that, yes, 100%.
Could you make sure he's invited,
Yes,
please?
yes.
Thank you. Mr. Keller, I think you have the next item.
I do, the council is considering, what I guess is mandatory, and that is the adoption of the ethics ordinance and setting up an ethics, committee. We were given a template by the, League of Cities, 25 or 26 page document. I communicated with them to find out what of that they consider mandatory, And in front of each of you, you will find a highlighted version that they have sent me. The very top outlines the statute, and I've provided you a copy of that statute that requires the city to have this ordinance. And the 4 areas that they say we are required to address. The middle note on the front page I found interesting, because that is to say that if we have it, we have the option, although the League of Cities recommends that it cover all city employees and all committee members, but that is optional. And then as you go through it, you will find a number of statutes that it cites in explanation, and I've provided you copies of all of those statutes. So my suggestion would be that the council review this for the next few days. You all have my email. If you would communicate with me your thoughts as to what you would like to see in a final document. I know Mr. Metcalf was very concerned over the extent to which the the original ordinance goes, and it is burdensome, there's no question about that. But we do have to adopt one, and, yeah.
Can I ask for further explanation of the middle?
Well, I think it says exactly what it says, the requirement that the city employees and board and commission members be covered under the city code of ethics is optional. In
So
other
who
words,
is covered?
Who is covered is outlined in
City officials,
KRS 65003, and here is this, yes.
but not planning and zoning,
No,
board of adjustment?
they can be covered, but they are not required to be covered. But honestly, if you're going to have it, and again, and I think it speaks highly of the city of Wilmore that we've had one in effect for 4 decades that's never met. But, we have to have it, to cover at least elected officials. And so if you want to, include employees and appointed, committee members, that's your option as well. And that is recommended by the League of Cities.
Which is gonna require them to give financial records of every
Yes.
person that you have appointed to the board
It is.
to,
But I will
as well as the
say,
council too.
I will say, I serve as the attorney for the Nicholasville Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission in Nicholasville, its members are required to do this. And I, as their attorney, am required to do it. So, it really, I mean, it's really not that burdensome, at least the manner in which the city of Nicholasville does it, but it does require you to annually complete a 4 or 5 page questionnaire.
Well, obviously you haven't read it, so I'm gonna ask that be,
Well,
Carried over.
the highlighted version is not ready for adoption. You'll see in there are several different areas that the city can tailor the ordinance to suit your all specific needs.
so you have something to read for Christmas.
Yeah, for sure. Might read it.
Okay, and again, everything that's highlighted is.
That is their comments. You'll note in front of each one of them, it says comment 14, for example.
Right.
That is a comment on that section, either saying that it's optional or much of this is, ironically enough, is already covered by statute. In fact, a couple of places, they outline where violation of it is already a criminal offense punishable by jail. They say jail, it's actually punishable by prison. but nevertheless, so, but I think the most important, element for you all to consider is the very top of the first page, where it says the 4 areas that have to be covered. Anything else, we can, use our own discretion on.
And you can extract that from this.
Yes.
So I guess what you're asking is the council will give you any
Feedback.
input
Yes.
they have before we go to the next phase,
Yes.
create an ordinance. And we're not in any problem not having this in place.
Now, it could be ready to adopt the first meeting, so it's not a problem. Or at least to get first reading the first meeting, we could get it adopted by mid-January.
We only have one meeting scheduled in January, and that's the 5th, I think.
Good.
Because Martin Luther King Day falls on
That's true.
the second meeting. Any other items of business? Hi, Joel. Didn't see you back there.
Hi.
Well,
You ready?
ready, Jim.
Will we adjourn?
Merry Christmas, sir.